You may have watched the order to cash flow series of videos. In this video, I'm going to combine all of the steps into a single video. And I'll do it with much less commentary. The idea, again, is so that you pick up the basic flow. Although it's still important to note that what I'm doing here is a basic flow. There are many other options and permutations that you will need to explore for your own business. I started in the last video by creating a quote, and I will do that in this video. So we're going to create a quote for T-Toys, and we're going to order 100 units of Y truck. One due 9 days from today. Okay, so that gives us our quote. I'm not going to bother to print it or do anything like that. I certainly could, but in this case, I'm simply going to convert it to a sales order. And so that has now converted it to sales order for, hold on a second. Let me get this screen sorted out for you. 40018. I'm going to take that off of credit hold. And you see that we have a line item for 100 yellow trucks, and that it's automatically created work order 40018-1 because this happens to be a make to order item. The next step in the process is to run the MRP, which I will do, looking out, in this case, a 30-day planning horizon. And after I've done that, I will look at the planned orders. I have one for a box, to purchase a box, which is needed to go into the subassembly, which is needed to make the little yellow truck. So I am going to release the box to a purchase request, and I'm going to release the subassembly to manufacturing. So the next step then is to look at that purchase request. And this would be the role, what I just did a moment ago would be a planner. This is the role of a buyer. And it's at this point that we're actually going to create the purchase order. So I'm selecting the supplier from whom we're going to purchase the box. It creates for me the purchase order if there isn't an open one that already exists for T parts, which is the supplier I selected. So 20194, line number 1, and I'm going to go ahead and save that. It has identified that I may be above my max desired cost, which I am, but I've chosen to continue. And again, I could print, which would both print and email this purchase order to the supplier. But in the interest of simply demonstrating the flow, I won't even print this. If you watched the more detailed series of videos, you saw me do that earlier on. I've released this purchase order. So now the next step is to receive against it. So I could go to Inventory Receiving, List Unposted Receipts, or I could use the icon for List Unposted Receipts. I'll go ahead and click New. I'll find the PO that we just processed and released, and I will indicate that I've received the entire quantity, and I will post that into stock. Now I'm going to turn my attention over to manufacturing. Again, there's quite a bit more information in the series of order to cash flow videos that break this out into smaller bite-sized chunks. Suffice it to say that we are going to do the simplest kind of manufacturing, which is posting production, and from there indicating that we are going to backflush materials and operations at standard and close the work order in the process of doing this. So I have now received 100 T-sub-1s into stock, and I have consumed the standard labor and material that go into making a T-sub-1. Now that it's on hand, I can go ahead and post production. Keeping in mind, I didn't generate any of the documents like the traveler, which I certainly in a normal situation would have. We're more interested in the flow here at this point. So I'm going to indicate that I have received 100 yellow trucks into stock. And now it's asking me which lot or lot numbers I've consumed the paint from that went into making the little yellow trucks. Maybe this time it's lot 18. And now I have received 100 yellow trucks into stock and consumed all the requisite labor and materials to do that. Okay, let's slide our attention briefly actually over to accounting for a moment. I'm going to go ahead and process accounts payable. So I'm going to voucher for the boxes that we purchased and received a moment ago. So let me go ahead and do that. I'm going to enter in the purchase order 20194 that we received just a moment ago and fill in the requisite information, some of which will come from the supplier's invoice. And let's say that this is an invoice for $35. I'm going to go ahead and distribute the line information. If I needed to, I could drill down into this detail, see the receipts, see what was on the original purchase order, and make sure that it matches or adjusted accordingly. In this case, I'm simply going to distribute the line, and then that accounts for the $25 worth of the boxes. I'm going to go over to miscellaneous distributions, and I'm going to account for the freight that may have been on this purchase order. And I'm going to save this now that it balances to 0. It's indicating that, okay, well, I just make up these vendor invoices, and apparently I've already used that one before, so it's simply giving me a warning that I have done that. And now I'm going to go ahead and post the voucher. Now it shows up under payables. It's from payables that I have the option to, or the requirement actually, to approve the line or a portion of that line for payment. I'm going to indicate the bank through which that payment will be processed. You may wonder why it's only approving it for $34.30. That's because our terms were 210 net 30, and so the system automatically recognizes that we're inside that discount date and assumes that you would logically want to take a discount for which you are eligible. I'm going to prepare the payment. I am going to print it. So in this case, it may be a printed check or at least a document that relates to a wire transfer if this account is one that we normally process wire transfers through. I will go ahead and send this to a PDF so that we can look at it. Okay, so there's my check report definition. It was indeed printed properly. So I will go ahead and post that payment. And now I've completed the accounts payable process. Let's turn our attention back over to issuing and shipping to the sales order. So I'm going to go to inventory, shipping, and issue to shipping. And I am going to enter the sales order that we entered earlier. Excuse me, I'm going to indicate pardon me, the quantity that we're actually issuing against this sales order line. In this case, it will be the entire quantity that was ordered. And then I'm going to go ahead and ship this order. I'll, again, forego printing most of these documents. In this case, I will create and print the invoice, and I will post it at that time. So I will go ahead and print it. Now, in this case, I have configured the system to suppress the physical printing of the invoice, but to email through Xtuple Connect a PDF, in this case, of the invoice. So this is what will be PDF'd and emailed to that customer. So that's on its way. The next step is to go to accounting and open up the receivables workbench. And in this case, we're going to slide over to cash receipts because we have a cash receipt of $1,185 on hand from our customer. and we want to apply it to our invoice. So $1,185. Perhaps that was received against a wire transfer. And we're going to highlight the invoice against which it is to be applied. And if it balances to 0, I can save this and post it. And now we've actually cleared that invoice out of accounts receivable and recognized the cash receipt into the bank. The last step here would be to take a look at our financials. So I'm going to go to the pro diem income statement, and I'm going to look at that for the current accounting period. And if I do so, I can actually drill down into this to see where that $2,850 is coming from. In this case, it's coming from a series of invoices, including the one that we just processed together. And I can actually drill from here directly into that invoice to see the details behind it. So in a very short period of time, we've gone through the entire order to cash flow from quote all the way through the planning, purchasing, manufacturing, receiving, accounts payable, shipping, accounts receivable, and ultimately to our financials. So thanks again for joining me in this order to cash flow video. I hope you found it helpful.